Hello, hello. Thank you all for being here. You are the winners because you're here early. We're going to give it another minute or two here before we get started, though. Thanks so much. And as folks are joining us, you will notice that today's conversation has been set up as a webinar instead of our normal preference, which is a meeting. But please do not let that stop you. We are happy to allow folks to talk and we can promote you and all of that fun stuff. So please don't let that be a deterrent for today's conversation. We had some issues with our initial links this month, and so thank you for your patience. I know. So case in point, Elena just said, boo, we can't see each other. And I fully agree with that statement. So like I said, we are happy to make it so that folks can at least talk to each other more easily throughout this conversation. But thank you for your grace in this. Not my preference either. So we'll work on that for next month. All right. And I see it is 3 o'clock, but we still got a number of people joining us. So I'm just going to give it another minute here before I start talking. And I know that we have a number of folks who have probably been on at least one, if not two additional webinars with us today. So thank you for spending your day with us. Appreciate that very much. Okay. All right. Okay, our attendee joining rate has every time I think it's slowing down, then more people join. So we'll give it another 30 seconds or here. But thank you for being here. We do appreciate it very much. All right. Okay. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started in respect to the folks that are on the call. I want to make sure we use our time well today. So for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Erin Lorandos, and I am the Digital Equity Program Manager here with the Arizona Commerce Authority. On the call with me today, I have Kelly. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Kelly. A lot of these names look familiar. It's nice to see everyone, even though I can't see you. We hope that you'll be vocal in the chat. We can even unmute if you want to speak. We do want to hear from you. Unfortunately, we just can't see you, but it's great to be here with everyone. Thanks for spending this hour with us. And I know Erin's got some details to share.
I do. Thanks so much. Okay, so just for the folks that have just recently joined, one more time, I will say that I apologize for the format today. I do also prefer the meeting format where we can see each other and really have a good conversation, but we had some technical difficulties this month that necessitated the webinar format. So stick with us and hopefully we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming next month. But to that point, Kelly has enabled the chat for us. So you can choose whether you use the Q&A box or the chat. I hope that you do take advantage of that. And please do feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute you and at least replicate a little bit of our normal situation. But to get us started today, I just wanted to give a few updates on where we are with our digital equity work here at the Arizona Commerce Authority, the statewide level. As many of you are probably aware, we did apply for our portion of the capacity pie. Well, we applied initially at the end of May and have been working through our conversation, our back and forth curing comments, they call them, with NTIA to ensure that our application is in the best place it possibly can be, so that once we get that award, we'll be ready to hit the ground running. So, that to that end, our application has not been approved yet. So unfortunately, we can't move into those next steps quite yet, but we're going to use this opportunity over the next month and a half to ensure to ensure that that we're prepared for those next steps. And from the Arizona perspective, a few ways that you can do that would be to read the digital equity plan. It is available on our website, and I am going to start dropping some links for folks here in the chat as long as we've got it available. So this first link that I'm sharing is to the digital equity page as a whole from the Arizona Commerce Authority's website. And from that page, you can download a copy of our approved digital equity plan and take a look at that. And of course, because you're here in our webinar, you're probably aware of a number of the other resources on that page, including links to register for our upcoming roundtable conversations and just our general contact information as well. So, so while we're waiting for our capacity app to be approved, I would highly recommend that any organization who would like to potentially apply for a subgrant from us as a part of that, do take a look at that approved plan and make sure that any plans that you're making from your organization align with the goals and objectives that are listed in that plan. That's really going to be our roadmap for how we intend to create the subgrant process and how we hope to really bring those funds back to our community partners. I'm just taking a look here, making sure if there are any questions about anything, please feel free to either use the chat or the Q&A. We can unmute you and you can add your voice to the space as well if you have questions as we go through. So in that same vein, once folks who are interested in participating in our subgrant process have taken a look at the approved digital equity plan, the next step in the preparing to apply process would be to let us know what types of programs and projects your organization is considering applying for funding to bolster. So we do have a potential subgrantee survey that is available. It's been shared a couple of different places through our newsletter and through these spaces, but I'll give you that link right here. It's just a simple web form to give us an idea of what programs and projects people are thinking about at this time. And so that'll help us in our planning just to ensure that we have an idea of the landscape out there. But of course, any organization that does want to apply for a subgrant is willing or is able to do that when that opens up. This is not a requirement as a precursor or anything like that. And all of the applications that are formally submitted are what we will obviously be looking at when we go to award funds within the state. I'm just taking a look here. So the chat, Mariana, I see your question here. Do we know if grants will be reimbursement grants or full funds to begin? So I'm gonna put a pin in that because just because some of our pieces and parts aren't fully approved yet, and we don't have a lot of those details ironed out yet. I'm going to wait to answer that question, but I do see it. I just wanted to acknowledge it, and I will be able to provide more information later on. Let's see. So a couple of things, going back to that subgrantee survey, this might answer a few questions that folks have. And to the point of, who is eligible and what that process might look like, I think I'd like to just take a moment there. So one of the things that we're going to ask in that survey, and then when you finally do apply for a subgrant, is what type of organization you represent. And so these are going to be the eligible subgrantees within our subgrant process. So our municipal, county, and regional governments or their anchor institutions, so their libraries, their schools, their healthcare facilities that facilitate the greater use of broadband generally is our definition for a CAI. And so organizations that fall into that would be eligible. We will also be accepting applications from tribal governments or tribal-led entities. So for example, if there's a tribal ISP that is interested in starting or expanding a digital navigator program, that could be an example of a tribal-led entity that would be eligible to apply. Next on our list is our community-based organizations, our nonprofits and foundations. So again, a number of folks on this call fall within that group. The folks who are basically boots on the ground doing these projects from a community-based perspective. Institutions of higher education, so our universities and our colleges would be eligible to apply as long as that program or project directly relates to the digital equity plan. And then, of course, our partners in other state agencies will also be able to apply. One thing that we are waiting to fully develop an answer for, that I've gotten a lot questions on this one, whether or not these will be all considered sub-grantees or if there will be contractor situations or direct service providers as far as the overall running of the plan is concerned. And that is something that is really going to be a case-by-case basis. I anticipate that quite a number of our partners will be sub-grantees in that you are a separate entity that are already providing or want to start providing a program or project that relates to the DE plan, and you're looking for funds to expand that. So that would be an example of a sub-grantee. Contractors could be, for an example, a vendor that's going to help us make our plan more accessible. So one of the things that we really want to be able to do with our plan and are allowed to do with this funding is making sure that it's available in formats and just language that makes sense to the average reader, and also that it's available in our community's preferred languages and things like that. So if, for example, you were an organization that would provide translation services, let's say, and help us make our plan more accessible, that could be a contract situation as opposed to a sub-grantee, but yet it will still ultimately help us achieve the goals and objectives that we've laid out. Another thing to consider when you're considering your potential projects is whether or not you plan to create a partnership with another organization. And we do encourage that to the extent possible, because in Arizona, as this group has probably heard me say, we are anticipating receiving just over $16 million in this first tranche of money. There will be 2 additional opportunities for the state to apply for additional capacity funding, but we don't know what those dollar amounts look like yet. And so I think that a really good way for us to spread the impact of these dollars across the state will be through partnerships. So please do consider that. And then other things that we're going to ask for in this early stage, which are things to be thinking about, but again, are not going to exclude anyone or anything like that, is whether or not you've received federal or state funding before. And really that's to gauge our understanding of the level of comfortability that our potential sub-grantees might have with federal reporting and things like that. As sub-grantees, you won't be directly reporting to the federal government in any way. All of your reporting would come to us at the ACA. However, of course, all of those bits and pieces roll up into our reporting. And so just knowing that, how much comfort folks have with that type of a process is part of our goal with the survey as well. So let me just go back to the chat here and see what else we've got going on. Elena, I see your question. Sounds like the competitive grant NOFO will be out before the state capacity grant guidelines. And yes, that is very likely. That is the next thing on my list is to talk a little bit about that competitive grant, but we are not anticipating having our final capacity grant guidelines or process open until the fall, probably the late September, October timeframe, just based on the landscape that we're seeing right now. And so yes, it is very likely that you will see the competitive grant before that, because it's due out before the end of this month. So that'll be the second part of our conversation today. But just for folks who are hearing these terms and maybe aren't familiar, there is another pot of money that was established through the Digital Equity Act that creates a competitive grant. And this is a nationwide competitive grant where entities who are eligible will apply directly to NTIA for funding. So a couple of the differences here, of course, besides the fact that it is a nationwide competitive process, the overall grant size is likely to be more significant from that. Exact dollar amounts are not known at this time because we haven't seen the NOFO, and it'll also depend, of course, on the applications themselves. But the likelihood is they'll be significantly larger. That being said, there will probably only be a couple of approved awards for each state because of the fact that it is nationwide. So the general understanding is that these are large, big impact across the whole state type programs that would be in line with what the competitive grant would be looking for. And so, those impact levels, obviously, then not every organization is going to have the programs that align with that really big impact, right? So we remain to be seen exactly what is in that NOFO, but I do want to share a couple of resources that are out there already where where folks have started to kind of collect what we might be able to reasonably assume will be in the NOFO. So before I move into that part of the conversation, I just want to make sure that if anyone does have any questions or comments about our current step in the process, or what I've shared very high level about the potential subgrant process from the capacity grant here in Arizona might look like. Just give a couple minutes here to see if anyone's got anything that they'd like to bring up. And again, feel free to use the chat or the Q&A, or just go ahead and raise your hand and we can unmute you as well. Okay. So I'm not seeing anything popping in, but again, even though this format doesn't look like it, I do want this to be a conversation. So feel free to pop back to a previous topic if we've moved on as well. So the next piece I would like to talk just a little bit about is some of that information that we have kind of seen come regarding the competitive grant program, even though the NOFO hasn't been released yet. And of course, everything official will come in that NOFO. There are a few resources I'd like to point out. So the first one, I'm going to drop the link in the chat here, but I'll go ahead and share my screen as well, just so we can look at it together. This first link is directly to the NTIA's website, which is, of course, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, who is the federal oversight for both the BEAD and Digital Equity Acts. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Get the right one shared. There we go. So everybody should be seeing an NTIA website now. Give me a thumbs up if that's true, just to make sure. Kelly, you're the only person I can see. So can you see my screen? Fantastic.
Yes, I see the NTIA.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Oh, good. Now I've got lots of thumbs up. I've got emojis flying all over my screen. Thank you for your help. Okay, so on the NTIA's website, they have given some of the high level information that they can share already about the competitive grant. And as I mentioned, this is a separate pot of money for these large nationwide competitive grant programs. So the total for this pot nationwide is $1.25 billion with a B. And this is, again, a competitive program across the entire state. So some of the things that they have shared so far include who will be eligible for this funding. So this list might look a little different than what we're looking at for the for the capacity grants within the state, but they do note political subdivisions, agencies, instrumentality of a state, including a state agency, or an agency of the state that is responsible for administering or supervising adult education and literacy activities, for providing public housing, etc. So just to make it perfectly clear, the Arizona Commerce Authority is not going to be applying directly for additional funding through this opportunity. So these would be other state agencies that fulfill those functions. A Native Indian tribe, Alaskan Native entity, or Native Hawaiian organization, a foundation, corporation, institution, or association that is not for profit and not a school. Community anchor institutions will be eligible, local education agencies, entities that carry out workforce development programs, or a partnership between any of those noted above. So again, these are going to be programs that are really, far-reaching within the state. And so again, I think that partnerships will be a key for that. There are some get ready materials available here, and this is also where you will go to see the NOFO when it is announced, and then application resources. So typically in this section for other grants that we've been a part of, there will be checklists and various forms that you need to fill out and things like that available there. But let's go ahead and click into this get ready materials right now, just to see what sorts of things are available. First, it does go into some information about digital equity, the Digital Equity Act entirely, a reminder that these programs will need to benefit the same covered populations that we discuss in the Digital Equity Plan, and that have been forefront in our planning and implementation at the statewide level. So same thing, right? It's going to have to relate to this. And it makes sense if it is in concert with the digital equity plan for the state as well because of this. We've done a lot of this, information gathering already. So it's a good place to start. It goes through again the entities that are eligible to apply. And then it does go into talking about how the grant can be used. And so this grant, the purpose is, really, again, to break down the digital divide and give people what they need for full participation in society. So some of those ideas that they're kind of naming here include developing and implementation digital inclusion activities that benefit the covered populations. So again, bigger versions maybe of some of the things that you might be thinking about for the capacity application. However, it cannot be the same program or project that you might get funded for through the capacity application. Facilitation and the adoption of broadband by covered populations, implementing training programs. So that goes back to that workforce development as well as digital literacy skills, making available equipment or technology for broadband services to covered populations. And then, of course, there is a piece here around constructing, upgrading, extending, or operating new or existing public access computing centers, which is something that our capacity grants are not, looking to do. So there's a difference there for sure. There is a match requirement within the competitive grant. And so it is up to 10% based on the kind of the opposite direction that this sentence says. The awarded grant, must not exceed 90% of the total project. So that means that the entity that's applying will be providing that additional 10% or more as a match. The period of performance will be 4 years from the date of the award. So that kind of keeps it in line with the end of the implementation of the DE plans from the state perspective. And also, the full final closeout for the BEAD program. And then an additional year is given to continue measuring and evaluating, which of course will roll into the reporting requirements. So then there are links here again to the resources around DE as an entirety, and the Digital Equity Act. If you haven't had a chance to read that in the last 3 years, to definitely take a look at that one as well. So I'm gonna stop my share momentarily because I can't see everything all at the same time. Okay, so let me just scroll up a little bit here. Okay. All right, I will not add myself to the conversation that is already happening and looks like it is done. So, okay, so Mariana says, for capacity grant, do you advise that we propose incremental growth of our existing programs or go bigger or pie in the sky? So that's a really great question. And this, I have to preface everything I say about the competitive grant, of course, or pardon me, for the capacity grant with the fact that we haven't necessarily, we don't have approval for what we are planning to do at the state, et cetera. But the easy answer for this is because our total pot of money is not gigantic. We are dealing with $16 million for the entire state in this capacity grant. I think that incremental growth of existing programs is a great way to look at it. I think thinking about it as kind of a Kickstarter for a pilot program that might be brand new for your organization would be good. I think pie in the sky is a little dangerous with this amount of funding, only because I don't anticipate being able to make awards big enough to make pie in the sky happen, if that's an okay thing to say at this point. So I don't want to, diminish anyone's ideas, but the simple fact is $16 million is not a ton of money when we look at the number of really amazing organizations in our state that are doing this work and that I hope to see applications from. And so I'm not going to be able to give $1 million to everybody, right? And I think that's important. Keeping that in mind, we also anticipate, that second and third round of funding to at least in part be available for subgrants, assuming, we're allowed to do that at those stages. And we don't know what those NOFOs for the second and third pot look like yet. But we also, assuming that we are able to continue running subgrants, we look at those as ways to further impact, the projects that are maybe funded in the first round, or potentially expand that funding, further, right? So if you think about, the first round, and I'm totally making up numbers here, but let's say I get 50 applications in the first round and we're only able to, to fund, let's say 30 of them. Maybe the second and third round could look at that remaining 20 before accepting new applications, right? But we'll have to see what the rules are around that. But please let me know if that doesn't fully answer your question or you'd like to talk more. Go ahead and raise your hand and we can do that. Okay. Let's see. Okay, PJ, I think your conversation was with Kelly, so I'm going to just let you continue to talk about that. Let me just check, and it looks like no one has put anything in the Q&A section yet. So at this point, knowing what we know about the competitive grant and how it might align with, but still be kind of on a different timeline from the capacity grants, are there any comments or questions that anyone would like to bring to this group regarding either of those? Oh, okay, hold on. Let me read this. Dwayne. So the Pasquayaki Development Corporation is building a state-of-the-art trades training center, which will be the field of dreams for trades training and was made possible from an EDA grant. We are an arm of the Pasquayaki tribe in Tucson. The grant includes heavy equipment for laying underground fiber to be used for training. We're looking for grant funds to sustain sustain the facility during the startup phase of this training center. Looks like the grant may be able to assist the Pasquayaki. Okay. Yes. Okay. So that's fantastic, Dwayne. Thank you for sharing that. I'd be happy to take you off mute if you'd like to share more about that opportunity in this space. But while you're deciding if you'd like to do, oh, Dawn, I am so sorry. I apologize. Sincerely. So Don, two things I'd like to add to that part of your thought process around that. There is also a huge connection, especially in the workforce development piece, with the BEAD funding, right? So the BEAD side of this, which we don't spend as much time in this conversation on, but that is the infrastructure funding. So Arizona received almost $1 billion to address the infrastructure improvements that the state needs to ensure that every single household has access to high-speed broadband internet. And so part of that program is also going to be looking at exactly what you're doing there. And so I would love to connect you with the BEAD side of the house. I mean, we sit right across the aisle from each other, but my focus is more on digital equity, of course, and theirs is more on that infrastructure side. And those workforce connections would be really good for that part of the conversation as well. We anticipate there to be a significant number of jobs made available throughout the implementation part of that infrastructure side of things. Probably a few thousand, right, within the state. And so having opportunities to upskill potential workforce within that space is definitely top of mind. It's considered non-deployment, right, for the BEAD side, but it also connects to the digital equity piece because as this group is well aware, once that that internet connection is made, those jobs then turn into customer service and tech support and billing and all of these other things that require digital literacy skills that if folks hadn't been working in those spaces before, they might not have had the opportunity to attain. So yes, definitely. Consider lowering the match for tribes. Oh, okay, I hear you. So do you mean from the BEAD funding, Dawn? Yeah, this seems like a great time to unmute you. Hold on a second. Let me find you in the list. I have 47 friends with me today, so it's a long list. Okay, here we go. All right, there you go, Dawn. Sorry about the delay there. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was looking at that funding that you were just discussing, and it actually hasn't come out yet, is what I'm getting, and that the NOFO hasn't been released, but they're priming it so that people can be in the know. When it's released, they can be prepared. And you had mentioned that I think you had read, not mentioned, but you had read that there may be, depending on what the Treasury Secretary, is that what it was, decides whether or not they lower the match funding requirement. I know in for the Department of Energy, I think it was grants that they had lowered the match funding as well as in other areas for tribes because of the areas where we're located. We don't have a lot of economic development, and so I'm just hoping that they do decide to do that, because that'd be helpful, because match is always a challenge, although depending on whether or not they have in-kind match, sometimes we're able to offset it. But that's what I was talking about. And I did hear about BEAD funding, so maybe that's something I can explore as well, because luckily we are blessed to be able to work with Local First Arizona, who has helped us with grant writing to go after funds. So maybe they can help me with that BEAD work for our tribes, right? Tribes. So yeah,
it's a great acronym, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So let me take your comment apart a little bit, because there's a couple of different things I want to make sure that I'm really clear on. Okay. So with the BEAD side of things, because it's first and foremost meant to connect the households to the internet, the subgrantees through that process, for that part, of course, are our ISPs, right? Both tribal ISPs and and others. They could also be local governments, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole other part of the website that goes into those details. There's a non-deployment piece to that, which our office is responsible for helping coordinate, and that speaks to those workforce opportunities and things like that. So I will definitely connect you with folks and answers on that piece. As far as the build out for the connections part, there will be high cost areas versus non-high cost areas, and the requirements for the ISP or the government that's fulfilling those project areas will be different depending on that. So for example, there wouldn't be a match in the high cost areas. Now that's for the laying of the fiber part, right? Then
Right.
with the workforce piece, that's a little bit different because it's not a vendor relationship, it's more like the DE side of things. And so the conversation, is a little bit different there, but I'll get you those answers on that piece. Then back to the digital equity part, the competitive grant, so the big nationwide one that has the big pot of money, but then fewer recipients in each state, will have that 10% matching. Looks like that's what they're anticipating. Again, we haven't seen the official NOFO, but that's the information NTIA is sharing with us now. But the capacity grants within the state do not have a matching component. Okay.
Oh, that's great.
So, right. But keeping in mind the total awards for subgrants will be a lot smaller there. So it's kind of like a balancing act, right? Between a program that might benefit from a big, huge dollar amount, then, might have to deal with that match. But if, you're looking at just, and this doesn't necessarily relate directly to your comments here, but generally speaking, if you're thinking more on just continuation of service or expanding to ensure that you're serving a specific covered population, things like that, it's going to be a smaller award, but then you don't have to worry about the match. Does that kind of, it's like putting all these little, it's so many different things. They all connect, of course, but they're all slightly different. So it does get complicated. And so really, I think the takeaway is figuring out which of those align best with, the program or project that you're working on, right? And so in your case, Dawn, I think, the non-deployment pieces of BEAD is definitely something that you'd want to look into. And also because you're building a workforce for that implementation, that part is going to get going quicker because it has a bigger lift, right? So connecting every single household in the state that doesn't currently have access to high-speed internet, that's a lot of work, right? And so like having your resource center available for the need that's going to be in your project area, which is the Pasco Yaqui tribe, because that will be a separate project area with all likelihood in the BEAD side of things. We want to get those connections rolling earlier because that work is going to start potentially sooner, right? But then the bigger conversation around workforce development in general and how it connects to both digital equity and also the BEAD workforce is, the other half of that conversation, right? So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, and so the funny thing is that the reason that we got to this point is because I oversee a construction company also by the tribe, and offered an opportunity to basically put fiber from all the way to the Mexican border with our construction company, but we needed training because the machinery that's used for broadband, if you step off it at a certain point, you will be electrocuted and killed. So, right. And so it's very important to have this type of training available. And so we looked for it, and the only way we could find training was to ship our people out of state. It's gonna work for us. So like we're glad that we're going to bring this, and because the way that EDA had us write the grant and the size and the location, we're going to be able to offer the opportunity to to Arizona, and we've got people coming from tribes all the way up, as far as the Four Corners area that have been asking to come and train. So I'm just hoping that we could provide this to people on here if they're looking and interested in training their people to learn how to use this type of machinery. And so I'm glad that there's other funding out there, because there is to be a point in time where we're going to need to pivot from the building of the center to providing, to get it launched. And once it gets rolling, I think we'll be fine. But it's just like that startup period is always difficult in a business.
Totally, yes. And thank you for shining a light on one key thing I just want to make sure everybody heard. Part of this whole conversation is around making sure that people have what they need where they are, right? We should not ever expect people to travel, across the state, let alone to another state, to have access to, fill in the blank training, right? Like whether it's this workforce piece or digital literacy skills or, workforce training in general, right? Like I think that's really important, and thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so let me know if there's more that we want to have on that part of their conversation, but I just wanted to take a look here in the chat. We do have another question. Mariana says, can organizations apply for both types of grants, capacity and competitive? And yes, the answer is yes. However, it comes with a caveat. We we're the ones that will be ultimately administering that subgrant for the capacity piece. Competitive is nationwide. So, there's definitely that scale piece that we've discussed. The other thing to keep in mind is that the exact same program won't be eligible for both, in my understanding. Now, again, please, don't take anything I say as gospel truth here. We have to read the NOFO, but that is our understanding at this time, that, you cannot, and I'm going to make something up here, but let's say my program is, to provide, digital literacy skills training to one of the covered populations. I can't literally copy and paste that same program and apply for both the competitive and the capacity funding for that. It would have to be a different program. So the unfortunate part of that is some of our organizations maybe only have one or the other, type of program that they would be applying for, right? And so it's again that balancing act between aligning your organization's needs and goals with the program that makes most sense for that expansion. So yes, so yeah, you'll have to have a separate program, and if you want to talk more through those specifics and like which one. Yeah, Elena, thank you. Angela Seifer is from NDIA, that's the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, and she said just don't call the programs the same thing in the application. But take that with a grain of salt too, right? But yeah, so if there are specifics that anyone on the call would like to talk through, like which one we think makes most sense, I'd be happy to have that conversation with anyone. We also have and actually, let me see before I call her out. I don't think she's with us on today's call, but another fantastic resource in our state is Nicole Umayam, who is our federal program officer. She works for NTIA and helps us through all of these processes, but she's directly here in Arizona. So she's a fantastic resource. If there are especially specific competitive grants, questions that need further discussion, I would encourage you to connect with her as well, and we can share her contact information in the follow-up as well today. But actually, to that point, I did want to give a little bit of a preview of what we plan to do in this space for the next couple of months that might help with some of these thoughts as well. As I've said, probably ad nauseum, we can't move into the next steps until our application is approved. And so, a lot of this is, we have to wait right now. But again, we're trying to be as prepared as possible for that next step when it comes. So we are actually inviting Local First Arizona into this meeting space next month for a presentation from them regarding how to be a subgrantee and or a contractor in a program like this. So they'll help us prepare our potential applicants and our potential partners with some of those more technical pieces, like some folks have mentioned. Dawn, I think, is the one who mentioned, that they worked with Local First for some of these applications, and so, they'll be able to give us an overview of what it looks like to be a subgrantee in a federal program and things like that. I also anticipate, again, depending on the timing, I'm not going to say, for sure when this will happen, but either next month in addition or in September, I do want to have Nicole come and do a presentation for this group, from that federal level, what this all what other questions we can answer, what it looks like. At that time, we'll be in the middle of the applications for the competitive program as well. That, probably will be open for 2 months or so once it's posted. Again, don't quote me on that, but based on what we've seen in other application windows, it'll probably be around that. So we can pick her brain on some of those competitive grant questions as well. The last funding source that I wanted to make this group aware of, just so that we are aware of all of the things that are out there, is the Native Entities Capacity Grant. And this was a set aside from the original pots of money for both planning and capacity building, specifically for Native entities. So the application information was included in the NOFO for the capacity grant, and I can post links here momentarily to where to find all of that. But specifically for Native entities to do their own planning and then capacity building for implementation. Okay, so that application is going to open on September 25th and will be open through February 7th. So there's an established window already for Native entities to apply for both planning funding and capacity funding in one pot. Okay, we have that information in the NOFO, but just to distill it, there is $45.3 million available in this portion of the funding for Native entities. The grants are competitive, however, so only some applicants that apply for that funding will receive it. And grants are anticipated to range from $500,000 to $2 million. Okay. And so again, this is meant for both digital equity planning and then implementation of the plans. So it's sort of both steps that the states were taking rolled into one. Okay. And Native entities, of course, are able to use this without any involvement from the state. However, again, it would be great if, these things were in alignment so that we don't end up duplicating any efforts, as we go through things. But it's a totally separate process. Alicia, I see your question, how many will be granted? So that's a question that I don't have exact answers to. However, it is competitive again, so not every applicant will receive an award from this. And they do have that range, approximately 500,000 to 2 million for each award. So dividing that out of the 45 million that is available. I mean, you could probably get some rough idea of how many, but because there is that range there, it wouldn't be exact. Okay. I did want to share actually the National Digital Inclusion Alliance's reference to this program specifically because as I said, the information was included in the NOFO for the capacity grant, so you can read NTIA's version there. But I really like how NDIA, the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, distills those things out of that NOFO into a really easy, one-pager effectively on their website. So I did want to share that with you. And so the turnaround time seems pretty good. NTIA is expected to award funds from this pot starting next summer. So if the application window closes in February, it'll be spring into summer to review and have those conversations like they have with applicants. But then, we'll start rolling out grants in the summer of 2025. This comment comes from my experience. I have applied now, through the cycles for the statewide funding, and I would encourage folks who are interested in applying to apply earlier in that time period rather than later, just because it seems like things happen on a rolling basis, and so approvals and all of that might come faster if you're one of the earlier applicants. So that is, again, specifically for Native entities to apply for, and it is both planning dollars and implementation dollars, and it is competitive. So it kind of rolls a few aspects from all of those other programs that we've discussed so far today into one, and to benefit the Native entities in the country. And hopefully we have lots of really great applications from Arizona, and we're well represented in all of these opportunities, of course. So are there any questions on anything I shared there, knowing full well that I am 100% reading the same resources that are available to you all on those last two, because nothing official has happened. Thank you, whoever sent me a heart. I can't tell who sent it, but thank you. So while you're considering, if you have any questions or comments at this point, just as a recap, I wanted to make sure that everyone on this call knows I am 100% happy to have one-on-one conversations with anyone working in this space who would like to either talk through a potential idea for an application to any of this, and up until the day that we actually open our subgrant process for the digital equity component, we can definitely have those conversations. Obviously, once the final application window is open, then we have to stop talking to each other for obvious reasons. But I do want to have those conversations now. Feel free to reach out directly to us. My contact information is all over the website, but in case you're looking for it, my email is going in the chat right now. I am erinl@azcommerce.com. If I can spell my own name, that's always good. Talking and typing is never good. And of course, I'd be happy to, start by email, and then we can set up a call, or depending on where you're located. We're here in Phoenix, but we are participating in a statewide engagement tour right now, which I can leave it to Kelly to give the details of. But if we haven't already been in your backyard, we'd like to be very shortly. So we can also find time in one of those opportunities to chat. Let's see here.
I will chime in and just, I see what Steve said, that he's trying to download the chat and it's not configured. I will see what I can do on this end for the chat. I'm not sure what the settings are, but anyway, I will take a look at that and follow up. I think it might automatically appear on my screen, and we might be able to provide that. And then when we upload it, I'm not sure if it's uploaded with the video and the chat as well, but I'll look into that. And then as far as our tour, I'll put a link in the chat, and we are trying to update that as we go. And I can't talk and do two things at once, so I will stop talking, put that link in the chat. Thanks, Erin.
We all have the same problems, which is good, because then we can talk while the other person types. It works out very well. But to that end, as Kelly mentioned, we do our best to post the recordings of these conversations to our website. There hasn't been one every single month this calendar year yet, and so that's why you don't see links to recordings for every single one of them on our website. But we will share that as soon as we possibly can. Robin, is there a link to the capacity grant? So at this time, the answer is no, because the information that's currently available for the capacity grant is for the state entities who are applying. So we're still in that phase. We don't have an exact timeline for when our application will get approved, but we hope soon, because we'd like to, move into our next steps of implementation by opening up those subgrants in the fall. So when the subgrant process starts for the capacity funding, so the money that organizations in the state whose work aligns with our goals and objectives laid out in the digital equity plan, they can apply directly to us here at ACA for that subgrant. Once we are able to share the details of what that application will look like and what those requirements will be, you'll be the first people to know because you're on our email list. But we do, anticipate using this space in the upcoming months to prepare for that. We will continue hosting regular conversations with all of our stakeholders, like this group, and then we'll also start having more specific conversations for subgrantees within different categories, different entities that will be engaging with in a different way because of those subgrants and those programs and projects that are coming up. So you can take a look at the digital equity plan to see, what those goals and objectives are. But again, we will continue to save space for big conversations as well as more individual conversations around the pieces that people are involved in. And Mariana, would you like to be unmuted to talk about the Arizona Digital Inclusion Network momentarily? And then I will bet you that Steve will be right after you to talk about AZBSN, but I have to find you in the list. Oh, you know what? Zoom is so awesome. It pops the people whose hands are up, like up to the top, so I don't even have to look for you. All right, Mariana, please.
Thank you so much. I know I've been asking questions. That's my afternoon thing, is like, ask questions, ask questions. I'd like to invite everyone on the call to the Arizona Digital Inclusion Network. If digital equity is your gig and that's what you dig, oh, I made a rhyme. That's even better. Please join us. You will need a link for the meeting, and to get the link for the meeting, you can email Cindy and she will send that to you. You just need to email the correct email, which is azdigitalinclusion@gmail.com, not gmail, but gmail.com. Yes, hope to see you there. We're doing lots of great discussions. We're starting to kind of unpack the covered populations in Arizona and really put our focus around making sure they're included in our plans.
Thank you. It sounds like you've got an idea for your next t-shirt too, with that beautiful rhyme at the beginning. Steve, would you like to let everyone in this group know about AZBSN?
I would love to do that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. So I'm Steve Peters. I coordinate the Arizona Broadband Stakeholder Digital Access Task Force. We're a collaboration of folks from government, education, nonprofit organizations, state government, local government, libraries, telemedicine, nonprofit organizations, etc., who participate. We meet every Thursday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning by Zoom, open to anybody who is interested to participate. And we have updates from Aaron and others from the broadband office, from telemedicine program, the state library, and many others. So we keep up to date. So if you want to know what's going on in broadband and digital inclusion here in Arizona, it's a great place to keep up to date. We also have various programs. So for example, this Thursday, Cisco, who many of you may know, Cisco, which is a huge company, is bringing their team of people from Arizona who are going to talk about what Cisco is, what kinds of resources they have. They have grants, opportunities, and so forth. So they're going to be talking about that. We're also, actually, we've changed the date, but we're going to be doing a forum on community networks. What is a community network? what are the pros and cons, different models, and so forth, so people can know about that. We're also going to be starting some discussions about related to digital equity, and that's going to be happening probably in the next couple of weeks. So if you're interested, you're welcome to contact me at Steve Peters. I'm sorry, at ATIC Arizona at gmail.com, and I'll put that in the chat. And my phone number is 520-321-1309, and I will be glad to get you added to our list. Thanks, Aaron, for the opportunity to do our promo.
Of course. No, I think, it's super important for as many people as possible to be involved in as many groups as possible, because, the guest list is ebbing and flowing, and you just never know who you're going to meet and what connections you can make. So highly recommend.
Actually, Aaron, if I can just add one thing,
Sure.
I also do a newsletter every week that has an update on what's happening in Arizona, what's happening at the feds, what's happening in local communities, different events and so forth that are going on. And I do that every week, including the recording of our meetings, the transcript, the chat, and the attendance list. So if you miss somebody and you want to talk to them, the attendance list is also available. Thanks, Aaron.
Yes, of course. Thank you for adding that. That's definitely part of the value, 100%. Elena, you are next on my list.
Yeah, so this isn't quite in the vein of this particular meeting, but it is about broadband and it is about ACP. And a few people on the call I've already emailed separately because I saw they were on the call. But so we found out, so today we have got word from Senator Lujan's staff that Lujan and the FCC, and Lujan, he's the representative whose legislation is like our last hope, literally our last hope to get any more funding for the benefit, for the internet benefit. They are desperately looking for stories, for impact stories of people who are struggling now, either paying their internet bill or they did not continue their service after ACP. And we are looking for impact stories. We're trying to help them collect these stories from various organizations across the country. But so many people on this call are people in the trenches doing the work, and maybe hearing of people that are now struggling because they can't pay for their internet, or now it's just, they've stayed on their plan, but it's ebbing and flowing, like you said. Like some months they can stay on and some months they can't because they got to pay for the groceries or their rent or whatever. So I will happily put my email in the chat. We are not looking to identify anybody. We are looking for like a first initial, last name, and the city where they live, or the region where they live. So it could be a sentence or two, it could be a paragraph, it doesn't have to be anything long. So that is my ask. And I will put my email in the chat for anybody who can either reach out to me, connect with me, connect me to somebody else, whatever we can do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erin.
And yeah, definitely. And just to echo that, everybody's got a story. I mean, my own mom was on ACP and is struggling. So, she doesn't live here in Arizona, but it's, yeah.
If I can get that story from you, that would be awesome.
Sure. Yeah.
The problem is, you're right. Everybody has a story, but everybody also wants, they're embarrassed, right? Like They don't want people to know that they're struggling. They don't want people to know that they have had difficulty paying their bills. So getting their stories has been really difficult. And that's the catch-22, because the more that the other, I don't want to say Republicans, but the more that those who don't see a need for ACP or an ACP-like program, they need to hear from real people. And they need to hear that there are people out there who are making decisions about paying the water bill or paying for their internet or, whatever. So I will put my, my email and my name and my organization and everything in the chat, and anything like that. Like, Erin, if you can just type that up into a few sentences and send it off to me. We're not gonna, like I said, doesn't matter if she's in Arizona or not. This is federal. So
right. Yeah, no,
That-
I definitely will. You can always, you can always rely on me for a few sentences, you know that. Maybe a few more than you
Absolutely.
wanted. Steve, I see your hand up again. Would you like to take the floor back? Can you still unmute yourself, or do I have to do it again? Oh, there you are. Okay.
So just to follow up on what Elena was talking about, just a reminder that there are a number of ISPs who are now offering low-cost options. And if you're interested in looking at where those options are, you need to look at, is it AZ Arizona Connects?
Connect
Connect Arizona.
connect-arizona.com. And
Yeah.
I know at some point here we had folks from the state library with us. I'm scrolling through the list to see if they're still here, but if they'd like
And
to
actually,
talk about,
Erin,
yes,
if I'm not unmuting.
no,
The NTIA yesterday just came out. I don't know if you saw that.
I
They
did.
just came out with their ratings of these low cost programs and all that stuff too. So
Yeah.
that's something that, we can certainly, Steve, we can certainly share that out at, Thursday's AZBSN meeting. If you want, I can send it to you if you didn't
Sure.
get it.
So
Sure, absolutely.
since I have access to chats and copy and paste, this is the one from
Yep, that's it.
NDIA and
Yep.
Megan. Yes, a fantastic. Did you want me to unmute you, Megan? While I'm grabbing links for you, you could talk about Connect Arizona if you'd like. How do I do that? There we are. Go ahead if you'd like. Otherwise, I'd be happy to grab links for you.
Thanks, Erin. Yeah, the Connect Arizona is the state library's digital helpline. We've got digital navigators that are available Monday through Saturday for people to call in to ask for help. And our website, which Erin just dropped in the chat there, has the internet offers. And I think we're going to look to connect with the new information that came out of NDIA. And we're also going to look for some community or some impact stories. So
Thank you so much, Megan. I appreciate it. And
thanks,
hi.
Erin.
Hope
Hi.
you're well.
I'm doing great. Thanks, Erin.
Good. Okay, I want to acknowledge that it is 5 minutes after the top of the hour. So thank you all for hanging out with us as long as you have. Feel free to leave, but I also want to give more space for folks. If there's anything else that you would like to bring up in this conversation, please feel free to either put it in the chat or raise your hand, and we can definitely hang out for a little bit. This is a big group of people, and I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity, even though the format isn't the best today.
We figure out how to save the chat so that we had the links, or no?
We can. I don't think attendees can, but Kelly and I will ensure that we download it and send it. We can send it out to who registered for it for sure. I'm not sure if it goes along with the recording or not, so we'll make sure to keep it though. But yeah, there's a lot of really good information in the chat today. So
Thanks.
yeah, of course. Okay. Oh, Megan, I just want to make sure you see Alicia's note in the chat. I can connect the two of you via email if that's helpful after this.
Sure, thanks.
No problem. Yeah. Yeah. Just for context, Megan, Lisa's with Hopi Telecom. So that's why she's got something she wants to share with you.
Okay, sure. If you want to put Anthony on add him to that email, that would be great.
I can definitely do that.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay. All right. Well, we've lost about half our attendees. So the folks that are left, again, thank you for hanging out. If there are last minute thoughts, please feel free to share them. Otherwise, our contact information has been shared. You're welcome to reach out to us after this conversation as well. We always look at these meetings and all of our engagements as the start of the conversation, not the end of it. So feel free to reach out anytime. And if nothing else, we will see you back here in this space next month. The registration link is up on the website, and we will do our best to make it a better format next month. And thank you for your grace in today's meeting.
Hey, Erin.
Yes. Hi, Steve.
Can you, this is not for the whole group, I mean,
Oh.
they can listen, but you can also enable the captions, in which
Yes.
case they can also download the full transcript. So if they, even if they don't want to go through the whole video, that they theoretically can get the transcript too.
Yes, thank you for that. I appreciate it. You see, you're so much better at this because you do it every week. We only do it every month. So you are our Zoom digital navigator, and I appreciate
So
your help.
I'll be glad to talk to you guys some more about some of the things I've learned.
Yes, yes. Well, and I'm gonna go ahead and end our recording because we are now kind of
Sure.
past, but there we